Last year we're going into BU. I had a beer with my friends the night before, but then I set the collegiate record. I don't want to be complacent with NCAA titles. There's some people you'll probably know right away. Is this guy right here, John F. Kennedy. So he lived in the same
dorm as him?
You know who that is? This is the craziest one. I don't know if you can read who that is.
No way. Oppenheimer?
Yeah, so Oppenheimer.
Bro, what?
Yeah,
so when's your picture going up there? Two-time
I
NCAA
don't know.
champion?
I don't know. We'll have to see. I inked the target onto my back. I put the Olympic rings right on my back right shoulder, kind of knowing that everyone would see that.
Mr. Graham Blanks, Mr. Back-to-Back, Mr. Graham voted for Pedro. How you doing this morning, man?
I'm good. How about you?
Doing fantastic. Always a lovely time having you on the podcast. And if I don't get you on the podcast immediately after one of these races, my DMs get filled with get Graham back on the podcast. So it's a pleasure to give the people what they want. I guess first question for you. We kind of have this tradition on the podcast, I guess, where we have you on right after the big races, after the big moments. How'd you compare how you're feeling after this year's edition compared to last year's?
It's definitely very different. It's a very different race when you're defending, and B, coming back from the Olympics, kind of your whole perspective changes a little bit. I think for part A, I was definitely in a different mindset when you're coming back to defend a national championship. Last year, I was just I was so hungry to win. I just wanted to win so bad. I was coming off a runner-up finish in the 5K outdoors, and I really wanted to prove to myself that I could, win the national championship in Charlottesville. This year felt a little different, more I didn't need to prove anything to myself. I already knew I could do it. It was just a matter of being better than my competitors on the day and going through the preparations throughout the season. So ultimately, I was maybe a little less angsty or serious this season. Just kind of tried to be a little more grateful to be able to come back and compete with my team and compete on the NCAA stage, which is they put on amazing events for cross country. And then, like I said, part B, with the Olympics, your whole perspective shifts just because nothing gets bigger than the Olympics. I've never seen it was I think my prelim at the Olympics was on a Wednesday morning, during the work week, and the whole stadium was full, 80,000 people there to watch a 5K prelim. You'll never see 80,000 people at an NCAA cross-country meet, much less any other cross-country meet throughout the season in college. So in a way, everything kind of shrunk a little bit. It didn't take away at all from the experience or from the importance of these races, but in a way it did kind of help me have a little bit of a better perspective and kind of control the situation a little more.
When you do it once, as in win a national title, obviously people know your name. You're the guy that everyone talks about, and I think it naturally kind of puts a target on your back. How much did you feel that target this season, and were you able to run free throughout the year without having to feel the pressure or expectation to win another one?
Yeah, well, I didn't make it easy on myself because I inked the target onto my back after the Olympics. So I put the Olympic rings right on my back right shoulder, kind of knowing that everyone would see that. Ultimately, that was the reason I didn't want to get it, was because I didn't want to have that on my back. I didn't want people to see that. I kind of just wanted to do it for myself, but I couldn't let that deter me from getting the rings. So, and certainly, yeah, I did feel like I had a bit of a target on my back, but at the end of the day, it's just I was really just trying to be better than I was last year. I wasn't too focused on how people were keying off me or what people's expectations were for me, because I knew if I could just be better than I was last year, I'd have a really good shot at winning again, because last year I was really fit. I had a really, really good summer of training, and I was just in a really good spot. This year was different because I had a shorter build up, but definitely a productive summer in a different sense. So, I definitely felt there's definitely that pressure when you're a returner, but if anything, like I was less nervous this year, just because I really did internalize that battle to win, like within myself, and I knew that if I've already done it, then like I know it's not this grand task, at least for me anymore, but something that I can repeat if I'm at or better than the level I was the previous year.
2024, so this version of Grand Blanks I'm talking to lines up at the national meet. You can pick a neutral course, maybe like Terre Haute or Stillwater, or course that wasn't this year, last year. So this version of Graham races last year's version of Graham 2023 cross, both national champions. Which one wins?
Man, I don't know. I think this one probably. I think I do think I'm just simply a better athlete than I was last year. Yeah, I think this year's would win at a neutral setting just because. Um, Even though I think it would be a close race. I just think in general, like having even like getting in, I got injured after that season and then came back to make an Olympic team. Had a short build up to this year, but I still think that with all that experience, honestly, all three of those pieces, being injured, going to the Olympics, and a short build up, actually make me a better athlete and more prepared for the challenge just because I learned a lot the past year. And I think I would, if you lined me up next to him, I would want it more and like I would know how to get it done.
Obviously, you're not competing against that version of yourself in a race. Obviously, impossible, but you can compete against yourself in the term of what you did last year in preparation. How much does that go through your head in terms of, I know that I did this last year, it resulted in a national championship, not even just from a training perspective, but the sleep I'm getting, the nutrition I'm getting, the thoughts I'm having. How often do you compete against your former self in that sense?
Yeah, I mean it was nice because I had some like I knew what it took to get there last year, so I could kind of compare to my, like you said, my preparations and stuff holistically from the previous year. So like, you know, training of course is the easiest metric to compare. Like you have all your splits from previous years. So I was constantly trying to, hit those hit those same splits kind of in the beginning of the year. I didn't really expect to be at a better fitness level in early fall just because I had a shorter buildup. Um, and then by the end, approaching NCAA's, I was really trying to kind of see if I was in a better spot than I was the previous year. Fortunately, I was like after some key workouts, and that was big for my building confidence going into a race. Even after I lost a cross country race in the middle of the season, um, and then I also think something that uh, helped out big time was like we were talking about was kind of my mentality had this shift. I don't think there's anything wrong with my mentality last year. I think I was just like ready to go. Like I was so pumped. Like I didn't want anything to stand in my way. Like I was just ready to go out there and win. And this year I was just a little more relaxed. It was just kind of like any other meet. We had this like in Wisconsin, there was this indoor pool we had like with this like weird water park stuff. And man, we were just hanging out. I was just hanging out there pretty much the whole trip down in this hot tub with all these crazy water features, just like splish splashing. Like you wouldn't think I had a huge race like the next day or next 2 days. And even one of my teammates after NCAA's like said on the bus, like he's like, man, I was worried about you this year. You didn't seem as serious as you were last year. But like I think that's like, I mean, if I can go into a race without those nerves or that angst, like I think I'm actually going to be in a better spot because it saves a little bit of that energy for those last minutes of battle in the race where you really need to be sharp and you really need to be willing to go like to that extra gear, that extra place to finish hard.
I want to say it was the year after NAU won their first title under Mike Smith when he was full time. So it went like Coach Hines and then Mike Smith won one. And so I think it was the year going into their first three-peat. And there was a lot of pressure and attention on that team for the first time. Can they win three in a row? And I want to say it was going into Nutty Comb, which is kind of like nationals before nationals. I know there's pre-nats, but the years when it's not at when the national meet isn't at Thomas Zimmerman generally Nutty comes the big race, and everyone was talking about NAU, and Mike Smith felt the pressure and attention, and he took his guys to play. Why am I blanking on it? Laser tag. He took them to play laser tag the night before the race, and it was a similar mindset where a lot of people were like, "Oh, don't you think that's takes too much away from the race? Don't you think they won't be serious enough?" And in hindsight, obviously, they ended up winning Nuttycombe and another national championship. Mike was like, no, like we needed to keep the boys like loose. We needed to keep their mind off of the race. That was the biggest thing we could do. Like all the preparation happened in the weeks leading into it, not necessarily the night before. That story relates to your point in the sense of, I'm curious to have you dive deeper into how beneficial it could be for a listener to maybe take their running less seriously, and how, in contrast, by taking it less seriously, you could actually be benefited.
No, I totally agree, and I'm glad you're kind of digging into this a little more because it's something that people can sometimes not understand. Like, and I think I can speak on that pretty easily as an athlete that's accomplished, some things that people really want to accomplish. Is that like, big picture, like, the 95% going into a race is the training you've been doing like the previous months. Like, the races are won not on the course, but on the roads with your teammates, on the practice track, like months beforehand. Perhaps in the summer or maybe in like the months leading up to it at team camp. Like that's where the races aren't won. They aren't won. The extra 5% is on race day when you kind of take take all that preparation you had and then actually apply it, and that extra 5% is hard. You got to make hard decisions. You got to go. You got to hurt a little bit sometimes, but in reality, you already did all the suffering beforehand to accomplish like whatever you do at the end of a race. Um, and because of that, you don't want to mess. You don't want to screw up that 5%. You don't want to have. You want to save that energy for that last little bit of the race. Like I was saying, and so like you don't want to and on our team we call it burning matches. Like you don't want to burn, you only have a certain number of matches. You don't want to burn too many before a race. So like we on our team are always trying to like keep our mind off the race like well in advance. For me, I sometimes like limit myself. Like I didn't have an issue with this year at all. That in college, maybe as like a freshman and sophomore, I'd get really excited for races a week out, and then in the ensuing days before the race, get even more nervous and excited. So I started kind of like saying like, okay, 1 week before the race, that's when I'm going to stop thinking about it. Like I can think about how I'm going to win it or how I'm going to run it like 1 week in advance, and then done, and then just like don't think about it. This year, like it just happened a little more naturally, where like I just feel like I didn't really think about the races at all. Like just I was just kind of so caught up in the moment, so caught up with school and training with, and kind of having fun with my friends and teammates that like I never really got too nervous about anything. I always kind of had in the back of my head going into meets what I wanted to do, but never felt too nervous or overly excited. And like I can think of so many examples of doing things before races that people might think are like, um, you know, that could like affect you negatively. But in reality, it's just like a marginal thing that doesn't really matter because you've already done the 95% of the training. So like, for example, uh, when I was on my gap year, a lot of the Harvard guys, we were out in Flagstaff, and we were lucky enough that like people were putting on meets by the end of the year in California, so not a far drive from Flagstaff, and we would go down there and we would race just because we'd been training for like months on end with no races. And one of them was like just outside of Los Angeles, and I remember going down there with Acer Iverson, and like he booked us like he didn't book us anything. He just had some friends that lived at that lived at a next to like I forget what beach it was. Maybe it was like Newport or something. And they brought out some surfboards, and we went surfing the day before our race. And like I'm not gonna lie, like my arms were like really sore. The night that night, like I was like, geez, like I've never done surfing. Like we were in this freezing water, like it was just like, and we were out there for an hour, and then I ended up running like a PR by like 15 seconds. Like I ran like 13:37, and it was like at that point the best race I'd ever had in my life. Um, and I think it was because we were able to like keep things light, kind of enjoy the trip. And then by the time you get to the start line, you're just in a good spot. You're just you're kind of relaxed. And then yeah, like last year we're going into BU. Um, I had a beer with my friends the night before, like which people might be like, whoa, like that's crazy. But then I set the collegiate record. Like it's just like there's all these little things that like you might think like can affect your race, but as long as you're able to stay like relaxed before stuff. I mean, I can think about this for any race, like even like before, like going on hikes the day before, or like playing it, splashing in a pool before NCAA's this year. Like it really doesn't matter as long as you're like um, you've made the preparations for the race and you're just in that good mental space going in.
I have to ask you, have you ever watched Napoleon Dynamite the night before a race or the day of?
Ooh, I mean, probably in high school. But last year we watched, and this is also like staying in a good mental headspace. We watched Super Bad the night before NCAA's last year in Charlottesville. I think I probably said that on our on your podcast, but I mean, yeah, that was a really good time. We were just laughing super hard, and it's like night before the race. It's a really good way to keep your mind off of it, especially when you're locked up in a hotel. Um, I think this year before Ivy Leagues, we were watching like this like weird WWE offshoot that was on TV in like Princeton, New Jersey, and that had us dying laughing. I mean, that was the one of the funniest things I've ever done with the team. Like, that was hilarious. So, always trying to watch some funny stuff the night before big races.
You mentioned very early on in your response there that, races are won in the months leading into the race, into the big moment. For you, can you pinpoint a moment this season that you felt like you won the race before the race actually happened? And to this point, one of my favorite sayings has always been, at least like a frame of mind, a piece of motivation and training, is medals are earned in the off season. You simply just run the race to pick them up.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I think I mentioned this on the Let's Run podcast. They beat you to this, but just to say it again, and this was the same. Like I said, like comparing myself to previous years and stuff. Last year with Acer, um, the day I kind of knew that I could win the race was we did this hard workout, and we had some 2 miles in the middle, some 2 mile reps in the middle of it, and ended up running like. And thanks to Acer, we ended up running really fast because he was going out hard on every rep. We ended up running like 9:10, 9 flat, and then I ended up running 8:36 in the 2 mile on this like road loop. And at that point, I was like, okay, like I was like, I can win this race. That was a really good workout. And Gibby likes to set us up for those moments. Um, but this year, like going into it, I was a little, at least in training going into the postseason, I was a little nervous because like I lost Acer, I lost um, a summer's worth of training since I was at the Olympics, so I was coming off a short training stint basically for cross. Um, And so I was kind of like, if I can just get close to where I was at last year, like I'm probably in a good spot because like I'll continue to build fitness. Um, and this year we went out to that same spot, did a very similar version of that workout, and then I ended up running like 7:57 in the 3K, like on that same loop during a hard workout. And like it's just those workouts like that where it's like you can hit like a number, like where it kind of like builds that confidence, especially doing like reps that are like 2 miles or 3Ks where you race this distance. You've been racing this distance since high school. Um, it really puts things into perspectives because in high school I never broke 9, um, and to be able to like break 8 in the 3K during a training that gave me a lot of confidence. And then also comparing to my previous year, like when I hit that, I was like, okay, like I don't think I could have done that last year. I think I'm in a better spot. Like, and if I can get to an even better spot than my competitors, because surely they've gotten better throughout the year. Like, I think I've got a really good shot to win it. Um, and ultimately, yeah, a lot of my confidence came from training because um, outside of pre nationals, you don't really see, at least in the Northeast, like I don't get to compete against these guys from like from altitude or from the West Coast that are like fighting for those like top 10 spots. And so I didn't get to really see any of them outside of pre-nats. So a lot of my confidence had to come through kind of comparing to where I was uh, the year before. And yeah, like I like what you said about like, the training is where the races are won, and then you go to the race to pick up your medals. I like to say like it's just racing is just kind of like a celebration of all the fitness you've garnered, all the sacrifice and pain you've been through in training. Um, when you get to the course, it's just kind of like there's all these people there. I mean, it's basically like it's like a festival. It's like a music festival. So it really is just like a celebration of everything you've done, and that's kind of how I've shifted into that mindset of gratitude for all these races.
Obviously, this year's NCAA landscape looks a little different from previous years. It is constantly changing, but this year specifically, a lot of returners, including yourself, people like Parker Wolf, Haptum, like a bunch of studs mixed with a lot of international transfers. I mean, you see a guy, I forget if you're in 58 or 59 and a half. I think he runs for Texas Tech. I mean, the NCAA is just unbelievably stacked and looks a lot different than it used to. What was your general mindset in terms of you won last year, but every year it's completely different. It's a different beast.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was a big topic in the NCAA this year, like having a lot of these talented guys from international like coming in and like racing as freshmen and like they're already really good. Like, first of all, like I think that's something I personally appreciate. Like, I really think like I don't think we need to limit these people these like people coming in, particularly um, from East Africa. These guys like really have pushed me to be a better athlete and like really pushed me like to ultimately like I made it to the Olympics. I've developed a lot better as an athlete because I've been kind of forced to like get better at running. Um, so I kind of say bring it on, and that's the energy I brought into this year is like bring it on. Like I love it. Like I love that we're bringing these guys in to for me to compete against. Um, at the same time, I understand like it is difficult because we're losing probably some spots for like American high school athletes who aren't quite as developed or don't have the same times to get like recruited to some of these schools. Um, but for me, like as someone who's trying to be one of the best in the world, this is like I mean, this is the best thing that can happen. Like to have some of the world's best athletes in my backyard. So like I'm the one with the advantage. Like here, they have to come to the U.S. and race against me. Um, and so that's basically what my mindset going into this year was like. Let's do it. Like I want there to be even more competition. Like I don't want this to be easier. Like I want to keep getting better. Um, I'm very glad like I ran this NCAA cross season because I think I've gotten even better as an athlete. So now like looking forward towards indoor and outdoor track, and then hopefully the World Championships in Tokyo. Like I think I'll be well more prepared than was for the Olympics, and like I think I'll be like really ready for the challenge to step up against these guys that are in the professional ranks now.
You talked there about, competing against other people, competing against new people within the landscape of the NCAA, but going back a few questions ago to my question and discussion around like competing against yourself from yesterday, there was a quote I saw, I think earlier this year that I loved that just like flips competition on its head. And I think what fuels training. The quote was, your competition isn't other people. Your competition is your procrastination, your negative thoughts, your comfort zone. Compete against that. For the listener out there, how valuable do you think it is to shift your mindset sometimes from competing against other people, which I think competing against other people, like you need to have that flip the switch mindset in a race, and it should all be about competing against other people. But in training, I think a lot of times, and feel free to disagree with this and voice your thoughts. In training, I think a lot of times it's more sustainable to compete against those things and to focus internally on what you can change from a day to day perspective.
Yeah, I like that quote's like emphasis on uh, kind of having to race or sorry compete against like the negative thoughts and like your negative attributes because certainly that's like something that every runner has to deal with like for me like I'm still every race I have negative thoughts. And like we talked about this last year probably a little bit, but the first 100, 200 meters of every cross country race I run, in the back, my brain is just like automatically just like, oh man, like this is too fast. Like you're not feeling good today. Like this isn't your day. Like it's okay. Just take it easy. Like we'll get them next time. Like that's immediately my brain's response to like starting a cross country race because, the way cross country races are run and the way they're won are not rational. Like it's straight out the gates hard, and then you run hard for another 20 minutes, and then you have to run even harder the last 10 minutes. Um, and so like it definitely has been for me like developing as an athlete. Of course, the training's important, but that kind of comes easy, and the motivation to train harder comes easy, just because that's something you can kind of control and do day to day. But the biggest development for me has been like kind of conquering those negative thoughts, and not even conquering them because they never go away. It's just kind of understanding where they're coming from, understanding that they're normal, they're natural, and just kind of like in a race, just continuing to focus on the task at hand instead of being distracted by those thoughts. And if anything, um, at this point in my career, those negative thoughts are almost a good thing. Um, because when those things start going off in my head, I'm like, oh, it's just, this is what normally happens. That must mean I'm in a good spot because I've won a lot of races when I've been dealing with these negative thoughts during the beginning of a race.
Your thoughts there, as well as the word you used, distraction, reminded me of another quote that I think is very similar in nature, but a little bit of a different spin. So I want to get your take on this one as well. The biggest risk to your future isn't your competition. It's the distractions you insist on keeping in your life rather than doing the things you know you should be doing but aren't. People delay doing things they don't like for longer than it takes to do them.
Sounds like school to me. That's my biggest problem in school, and that's for everyone too. Is uh, yeah, just like I mean, it sounds like kind of procrastination. Uh, I'm lucky that like I don't feel like like I said, like with training, I kind of have this innate motivation and desire to like go out and train every day. And like I'm 22 years old. I've been running seriously for probably like 5, 6 years. So like it's it's not too for right at this point in my career, it's not too difficult for me to like get out the door and run hard. Um, in terms of my life, like yeah, that's something I deal with all the time. Like um, I procrastinate a lot because, like you said, I spend more. Oftentimes, I'll spend more time dreading a task than it takes to actually just complete it. Um, and so now I was talking before we got on the call is uh, classes just ended here, so I'm really trying to be proactive with my schoolwork and get stuff done before BU on Saturday. Um, and yeah, that's something I try to do in my life a little bit better, but that's a work in progress. I guess one thing I try to do is like, if you can if I have something to do and it takes less than 5 minutes to do it immediately. That's kind of like my rule of thumb. But a lot of things in my life take more than 5 minutes. So uh, I'm still, managing time management stuff with these big academic tasks that take weeks or months. So yeah.
I love the saying, procrastinating on something important is choosing to delay a better future. Reading a quote like that always makes me feel like a loser. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop scrolling on Instagram and get to work. I had a conversation with Dylan Schubert yesterday, and he brought you up as an example because I was asking him about his high school years. And, he was good in high school. He made NXN twice, but he was never necessarily like wildly stellar or anything. And likewise with you, you were very good. You were good enough to run for Harvard, but you weren't Newberry Park. You weren't winning national championships and constantly in the news and talked about as someone who was going to do the things that you've ultimately gone on to do. Can you speak to that high school version of yourself in terms of the growth you've experienced from that senior year of high school all the way up to present day? And why, if you're a high school out there listening, like you don't need to win national championships in high school to have a very successful collegiate career.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, a lot uh, different. In high school, I spent more time kind of like Uh, just kind of having fun like with my teammates and stuff.
Before I ask you another question, for those on YouTube, this is special. Maybe we'll put the video on Spotify as well if people want to go click back on their Spotify bio. Quick little break in the podcast for Graham to show some history. Take it away,
Yeah.
Graham.
So this is my dorm, and this is kind of like the Hall of Fame, all these pictures and stuff. So, there's some people you'll probably know right away. Is this guy right here, John F.
Dang.
Kennedy. So he
You're
lived
in
in
the
the
same
same,
dorm as him?
yeah, same dorm as him. Another funny one that people might know. I want to see if you recognize this guy. You know who that is?
Yes, that is what's his face from The Office,
Yeah,
Ryan?
it's Ryan. Yeah, BJ Novak. So he lived in this dorm too. Um, and it looks like all of JFK's siblings lived in here, which is kind of funny because it's supposed to be random what dorm you get. So clearly they were pulling some strings. But this is the craziest one by far. I don't know if you can read who that
No
is.
way. Oppenheimer?
Yeah, so
Bro,
Oppenheimer.
what?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, it's crazy, and he looks like the actor too. Like
Oh
they
my
got it wrong.
gosh.
So yeah,
So
if
when's your
it's
picture going up there? Two-time
I
NCAA
don't know.
champion?
I don't know. We'll have to see if what it takes to get up here. These are some pretty famous people.
That's wild, man. Wow.
Yeah,
What a privilege to have that shared. Okay, question in regards to that. Do people know the rooms that those people stayed in? Are there like
yeah, yeah.
or is
So
it
like,
yeah.
so I think the dorm has gone through a lot of renovations. I do think there is a suite called the JFK suite, which is just a room where JFK lived, and they just turned it into they basically locked it, preserved it, and they'll do private tours sometimes. Um, sometimes you're able to find out who lived in your room. Like when I was a freshman, when you're a freshman at Harvard, you have to live in Harvard Yard and all these other like tiny dorms. Um, and that those are like the really old dorms, and like all these people lived in them. So I was in the same room as Cornell West, like the same room. I don't know if you know Cornell West, who's like this philosopher, ran for president this year, I think, technically as an independent candidate. But yeah, it's kind. I think if you like ask around, you can kind of figure out who was in what dorm. But like, I know people know what dorm Mark Zuckerberg was in. Over in like, I think he was in Kirkland House. Uh, you can always there's always like the famous people that lived in each dorm.
Wild. Absolutely wild. Well, report back next podcast or podcast down the road after you've, won an Olympic medal and you deserve to be up there. Justice for Graham Blanks. We'll start a movement if you don't get up on there soon. I guess bringing us back into the substance of the podcast. So I had Dylan Schubert on the podcast yesterday, placed third at NCAA's, and he was talking about his high school career. I was asking him about, he made NXN twice. He was a very legit kid, obviously good enough to run in college at a high level at a good program, but nothing that would necessarily indicate third place. And in his response, he mentioned he mentioned Parker Wolf, like all really good guys, but not necessarily, there was nothing like Newberry Park or Nico Young-esque that would indicate the things that you've gone on to do, Graham. How do you view your high school career in hindsight? And what would you say to a high school out there listening who, maybe realizes that they haven't won national titles or set national records, but they view someone like yourself as an indication that you can do big things at a next level, even if you aren't, running 3:55 in the mile, winning NXN, Foot Locker, etc.
Yeah, I definitely think like I'm a good example of that, or like someone that you can use as inspiration, because I definitely didn't have a knockout of the park high school career. I qualified for NXN once, which is kind of like my big aspiration throughout high school, and like that was a big achievement for me. But like even there, I wasn't really all American. I never broke nine in the 3200. Never really ran faster than like 4:15 in the mile. And I was just kind of like not training too hard, and just kind of having fun. I even think in some ways Dylan Schubert was even better than me in high school. I think he was All American at NXN when I raced there, but it's hard to remember. So like the fact that like all these guys were better than me in high school, and I was able to win a couple big races in the NCAA level, like should give you some hope that like the difference a year can make, or like even just one season. is massive. Like you never know like really what your potential is until you try to fulfill it. So yeah, definitely like your future results are not determined in high school. You know, of course, there's people that run extremely fast and they continue to run extremely fast because they're extremely talented. It's also the case that there's people that, you know, aren't as good in high school that make a huge leap when they go to college or just 1 year down the road. Um, and, you know, there's even cooler stories than me because you know I was pretty good in high school to give high school Graham credit, but there's like a lot of people who like come to the NCAA and end up being all Americans who like weren't even able to be recruited to a D1 school, who might have even started at like NAIA or like D3 and then worked their way up to D1 and became one of the best. I'm sure you could, you know, you can look up this stuff, but like a lot of things change over the course of like a year or two. And I think a big part of that is making sure, you know, in high school, you're just kind of enjoying everything. You're not burnt out and you're just like ready to take on the challenge year after year. You want to climb that mountain. And it's possible. It's possible to make it pretty far.
I know from our conversations as well as knowing you a little bit that, you know, you work incredibly hard at the sport of running and that unlocks a lot of the achievements that the outside world sees. How much do these championships mean to you? Obviously, you've kind of dedicated your life to the sport of running. When you cross the finish line in Wisconsin, what's going through your head and just what's your overall reflection on the last 13 months of your life and all that you've been able to accomplish? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, like winning the championship races kind of mean everything for me. Like being able to compete in front of a crowd and stuff. Like, um, yeah, I mean, it's like kind of, and then it's like what you know, it's what I want to do, and like crossing the line. I've said this word a lot, like throughout this, but like definitely just a sense of gratitude um, that I've been able to, you know, be surrounded by so many great teammates, great people that have kind of pushed me to get to that level. And I feel like I owe it, you know, not only do I owe it to myself, but I owe it to them to like win these big races um, because I'm just kind of like the vessel of the village that like I'm lucky enough to be the one winning the races, but all these people really got me there. So um, it does mean everything to like win those races, and but ultimately, like I just want to do more. I'm not going to be. I don't want to be complacent with NCAA titles like at this point. I understand like maybe I'll never win bigger races than this, but I'm gonna try as hard as I can to like continue to get better, and then you know X years down the line, like when I'm wrapping everything up, like I know that I gave everything, and right now I think I've got off to a really good start. So I'm just continuing to try to like be my best and see how fast I can go.
Gerry Lindgren, I'm not quite sure how to say his last name.
Yeah,
Steve Prefontaine, Connor Mantz, Graham Blanks, they all have something in common now, which is winning back-to-back cross-country national titles in the NCAA. You're the only four to do it. You look at Gary, what a name, crazy, and Connor Mantz, the things that they went on to do in the sport, and in Pre's case, that the things that they probably would have gone on to do had they had the career that they were hoping for. Um, what does that mean to you, even being a part of those list of names and looking ahead to the next 5, 10 years, just seeing the company that you've been a part of and the trajectory that you're clearly on?
it's definitely a good sign. I mean, I'm a huge Gerry Lindgren fan. Like he's the out of those three, like he's the one I'm the biggest fan of. Um, he wrote a really good book called the Shadow of Gerry Lindgren. Y'all should pick it up. It's a crazy book, but it's like got some really cool running advice and stuff. And but I do feel like out of all those athletes, I do feel somewhat the most similar to him in that like he trained like an animal. I didn't train anywhere as near as hard as him, just because that's kind of how they trained back then, 50 plus years ago, when we didn't really know as
Uncle
much
Rico type stuff.
Uncle Rico type stuff. And like, Gary Lindgren would say some pretty pretty out of the park, make some pretty out of the park claims. Like I think he said he was on track to break 2 in the marathon, and he was running in these cornfields, and he passed out like 200 or 400 meters before the finish line. Um, he said in his book in the summers he would run like 25 miles or something to this lake, go swimming, and then run 25 miles back. So when I say like he reminds me of me, like that's not, that's definitely a wild jump because he trained insane. So um, but I think that's kind of his legacy, is that he like really maximized everything, like tried his hardest, and he was a really good athlete. So yeah, I kind of hope to embody that, where down the line, like I said, like when I'm done with everything, I know that I gave it my all, and kind of hopefully maximize my potential.
How would you define the word legacy, Graham? And what do you want your legacy to be, both within Harvard, as now you're probably the most successful runner on the men's side, at least in history, program history, as well as just legacy in the NCAA as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, yeah, I don't know how to define legacy. I guess it's kind of how you're remembered. And I definitely want to be, I guess, and this goes for both Harvard and the NCAA. Um, but I just hope no one ever thinks that like that I thought I was above anyone else. Like I've always wanted to be like a team guy. Um, and I certainly feel like I have, because I loved running cross country here, and I loved helping out with the track team during our big meets. And those are ultimately are like the best memories I have, are like winning Ivy Leagues with the track team and at UPenn, and like getting like 3 All-Americans with like Acer Iverson and Matthew Pereira my freshman year at cross country heps, or at NCAA cross country. Like those are ultimately like the big moments that like I'm gonna cherish the most, is like accomplishing stuff with my team. And I hope like that, like even in the NCAA, like that I've been an approachable guy. I've made good friends in the college realms, and like I'm just here to have a good time. Like I'm here to compete with these people, and I'm here to like um, to hang out with these people after meets and stuff. Like I hope like yeah, I hope that's kind of how I'm remembered, is like like I hope I'm remembered as a dog on the course and on the track, but also like a guy that was a lot of fun, that was authentic, and yeah, it was just a good time.
We talked about this in last year's edition, post NCAAs in Virginia, asking you this year's version. Did you get the bullet from the starter's gun? And what was I forget what it was this year, but did you do anything in front of the camera at the start of the race again this year?
Yeah, actually, this year I did not get the bullet. I just realized that. Last year I got the
Tragic.
bullet from NCAA's, and then I got the bullet from BU, which is kind of funny because the BU bullet's so small, because it's an indoor meet. So I guess they use a different blank or like bullet. Um, and then on the start line, yeah, same thing. No, nothing different. I did the thumb trick. I just guessed it sounds like the camera wasn't really rolling or anything when it happened. So I would have done it anyways, though, it's just kind of a pre-race ritual at this point. Um, so yeah, really, everything was kind of the same this year. Just repeating the motions, trying to be better than I was last year.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Another thing that got attention was the jersey swap at the end of the race. Podium awards presentation. Let's think big picture, because I have no doubt you're going to make teams and win medals one day. On the world stage, can be any event. Jersey swap with anyone on the international stage, like Tokyo or Olympics 2028 LA. Who would you jersey swap with on the top of your head?
I think it'd probably be have to be Yomif Kajelcha. Like at yeah, it would have to be Yomif. Just because he's like my probably my favorite runner to watch. Um, I think he's a bloody legend. So like to be able to swap with him, yeah, that would be pretty epic. But um, that would be conditional on him wanting to swap with me. And I don't know if like I don't know if he'd want to do that, or like if Ethiopia is weird about giving away gear. Uh, I don't think the college realm is like that because we get so much gear. It's easy to give away. But yeah, Yomif would be a pretty sweet jersey swap. Maybe we can get that in the future.
I know his management team a little bit, so maybe I'll plant the seed and you guys can connect
Perfect.
in Tokyo. Okay. Other question for you off the top of my head. What was I going to ask? Something about cross. Lose my train of thought here. Maybe we'll edit this out. There was one more. Here's what I was going to say. In regards to Yomif, have you seen there was like a mini series done by some niche media company that I think would create things for Nike. It was like a 2-3 part YouTube series leading into his indoor mile attempt. Do you ever see that?
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff.
I was like, I wish we had more stuff like this in the sport. I remember I was in high school at the time and I was like, oh man, I'm amped up. Like,
Yeah, he had some
that's
crazy
fire.
obviously he had Salazar coaching him, so that guy is nuts. Uh, and
He
he
was like puking
Yeah, he
after the
was making him
workout.
run like this like I think it was at the Dempsey indoor track, right? Washington,
Yep.
or
Yep.
running like I don't even think they ever said what he was doing, but clearly it was just like something really difficult because we know what like Salazar was assigning to Galen. Um, and yeah, it was pretty cool to like see him like he went to the Armory and like failed, like he didn't get the time, and then they're like, okay, we're just going to go to BU, and I guess this was before BU was even like really a thing. So Yomif kind of started that whole thing with BU in a way, like running that fast time, and then it really picked up. I feel like down the years, but yeah. There's actually a picture of Yomif and Clayton Murphy, who both used to be on the Oregon Project, jogging on the Harvard indoor track for like a pre-race, presumably because everyone comes to Harvard the day before BU. Because I'm not sure BU is as lenient with like pre-race stuff. Um, so that's a funny picture that kind of circulates our group chats every now and then. Is the image of Yomif jogging on our 1 mile indoor track.
Speaking of BU, as you just did there, wrapping up this conversation here, what's your thoughts going into Saturday? As well as, I guess, a beer before the race last year resulted in collegiate record. What are you thinking for this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of like, I mean, I'm super excited. I'm super confident in my fitness. I think I'm in a better spot than I was last year. Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna basically. I mean, the plans is, it's a rabbited race, so go with the rabbits and whoever's with the rabbits, and then just try to run as fast as we can at the end. For at least for me, like.